Guys, in this episode, we are looking at functions. Okay. Now, I might say that there are two types of function. Okay. The first one is the library function. The library functions are the functions that we are getting from C++ library. Okay. For instance, iOS stream is a library, and we are getting the function. These functions, we are getting them from that library. That's why we use using the namespace std. Okay, to get these functions from the library straightforward. Okay, so they have set a library for us that there are functions that we are calling directly from that library. Okay, so that is that. And we have the user defined function. Okay, user defined function is the function that we, the programmers, we are coding them by ourselves. Okay, these are the two type of function, take it like that. The library function that we are calling them straightforward from the library, and the function that we are creating them by ourselves. That is that. Talking about the user defined functions, now if you can check from our previous lessons, we declare a variable like that. Okay, the variable was having what a data type. In the same manner, functions also comes with a data type. Okay, now what are some of the data types that we can use to declare a function? There are many of them, but the one that we should know as soon as possible is what has been displayed here. Okay, we have the void, the float, the integer, the double, the string, the char, and the boolean, which is not something different to you, with exception of the void. Okay, because we've been talking about this once. Okay, so this is the one that maybe you are hearing it for the first time, maybe. All right, so now let's look at some of the examples of function. Okay, so now remember from the beginning I told you guys that this is our environment, the body environment. Consider it as a body. That's where all our code goes. Might change a little. Okay, but in actual sense, when we are dealing with functions, we don't code inside this int main directly. Okay, and function look similar to this one. Okay, so for instance, let me create a function. Okay, let's start with a void. Okay, we are creating a function. Okay, so we said void, and what is next? What is the name that given to that function? This void is being considered as a data type. Okay, but what is the name? What is the actual name that we are giving to that function? So I would like to call my function say something, and I will followed by a parenthesis, something like this. Okay, so now this is a function. Oh, sorry. It's void. Okay, void. Okay, so okay, so something like this. So now this is basically a function. Okay, what differentiates a function from variable? Now let's create a variable and compare. So for instance, if you are creating an integer variable, we don't say int age then followed by a parenthesis. Okay, it doesn't work this way. Okay, this is not how we create a variable. Okay, but with function, after we do the void or even int, then the name of the function, then followed by a parenthesis. Okay, so it is, even without this one, it's still a function. Even without the opening and the closing of the curly braces, we still have a function here. Okay, so this is a function. Okay, so what differentiates the function from the variable is this one. Okay, all right. So with a variable, it doesn't come with a parenthesis. Okay, but with a function, you see it ended with what, a parenthesis, and also to make it complete, followed by the curly braces. Okay, okay, so inside here, that is where the main functionality of the code also comes. Okay, and then also the function name must be meaningful. Okay, for the readability of the code. All right, so whenever you are declaring a function, please make sure that the name that you are giving to the function makes sense. Okay, it actually makes sense. So our first function that we created says what, say something. That means that we wanted to say something. That's why we use the function name say something. Don't just give it a fancy name like A, B, C, D or A, B, C, D. No. If your function is long, like the name of your function is too long, it doesn't really matter. Okay, just make sure that it makes sense. And moreover, when you are creating function, it is more advisable to use what is called a camel casing, and that is what you are seeing on your screen. Okay, so the first letter is small, and the next word that follows must carry on with the capital letter. So say something. You can even add something to it. Maybe say something now. Okay, and you are good to go. Okay, so that is camel casing for you. All right, now if we check this one and this one, you can see that they are similar. Okay, let's write something because our function says we should say something. Okay, or say something now. So what are we saying? Then we will do our C out. Then in a string we say what. Okay, so this is what our function says. Hello world, let's talk about C++ function. When we run this function, what are you going to get? Actually, we are not getting anything. So why is it that we are not getting anything? That is what I want to talk about in our next step. Okay, first, we've been able to understand what is function, types of function, and the data types of function. Okay, so now let's talk about function called. So now every function created must be called before it will display. Whenever you create a function, you need to call the function to see the function functioning. Okay, let me put it that way. Whenever you create a function, you need to call the function to see the function functioning. Wow, wow, awesome. Let's take it again. Whenever you create a function, you need to call the function to see the function functioning. Ooh, bars, man, bars. This is punchline. Wow. Anyway, I was once a rapper, so yeah, the style was there. Anyway, that's just by the by. Let's move on. So all what I'm trying to mean is that after you've created your function like this, successfully like this, for it to be displayed, you first you still need to call it. That is where this our body environment is very, very important for us always. We cannot do without, even though we create the function outside, even though the rules say that we don't create the function inside, but we create the function outside. Still, we still need to call the function inside for it to be able to display. Let me show you what I mean by that. I have to call the function. So to call the function, I'll say what. So by doing this, say something now, followed by the parenthesis. By doing this, I've called the function. Okay, so now let's run the code and see if you have a result at all. And there we go. Hello world. Let's talk about C++ function. Okay, so now you can see that our function is working because we have called it, and we don't call the function outside the its main scope. Okay, we call it inside. Okay, we call it inside. All right, so now that we understand this concept, let's go to the test step. The test step is the importance of function. Now, with the importance of function, one of the most essential usage of function is the reusability of the code. Okay, reusability of the code. What does it mean? It means that when you declare a function once, you can call it as many times as you want, and you can use it as many times as you want. For instance, we are building a project and we created a function like this. So whilst we are still going, I'll still need this function in another portion. All what I have to do is that I have to just call the function, say something, and I'm good to go. So for instance, if you want to display this one maybe 100 times, you only have to call it as many as you want it. Maybe I want to display it 5 times. You only have to call it 5 times and you are good to go. Okay, so by doing this, calling the function like this, when I print it on the screen, I'm going to get this result. Okay, let's run the code. And there we go, we can see that we have it here. Okay, all right, so this is the most essential uses of function: reusability of the code. Declare a function once and use it as multiples of time as you want it. Only call the function and you are good to go. All right guys, so now as I said before, we already familiar with these data types of function. We know that floats are used for decimals, okay, and integers are used for whole numbers, and also double is used for both decimals and the whole numbers. Okay, and we know the strings are there for sentence. We know the char is for a particular alphabet or a particular number. Okay, and boolean is there for true or false. Just get it like that. Okay, we will take a time and talk about boolean, but for now, let's consider boolean to be true or false. Okay, it is used for conditional and rendering and so on and so forth. Anyway, but for the void, okay, we will not talk about the void, even though we are using it, but we will not talk about it. Okay, now the void, as the name implies, when you say something is void, it means it's void. All right, you don't need a better explanation. Okay, when you say something is void, it means it is not all that important or it's in vain. Okay, so we have a function that returns and the function that does not return, and we use void to create a function that does not return. You might ask a question, what do you mean by that? Don't worry, whilst we are progressing, you will get it better. Okay, all right, now I might say that there are different ways of writing C++ function. Now we might make your research and you see some programmers writing the function differently. Okay, C++ function differently from what you are seeing here. All right, but they are pretty much the same. Let's look at some of the ways that other programmers used to write their function. Okay, so others would just omit all these ones. Okay, like this, they will create a function like this, and they will end it with a semicolon like this. Then they will come outside. They will come outside the int main. Okay, and they will create a function like this here. After they create a function like this, they will come outside here. After they declare it like this, they will come here and do the whole thing here again, and then later they will go ahead and call the function inside its main right here for it to work. Okay, so when you run it like this, and there we go, you see that it is working. Okay, so it is pretty much the same. Then you ask yourself, why do they have to do this? Okay, everyone and how he like to outline his code. Okay, what I taught you first and this one also, they all works perfectly. The reason why they have to make this declaration is that when you take this one out, Let me comment it. When we comment this one out and run the code, see what will happen. It said build failed. Okay, you can see the response that my S code is giving me. The build failed, and you can see the declaration identifier says something undeclared. Okay, so we've not declared it. Okay, so it cannot fathom it. Okay, so it's going to give you an error. So that is why they first have to declare it here. Then they don't want to write their functions at the top, but they want to write every code that pertaining to whatever they are doing here straight at the bottom. They are comfortable doing that, but for on the other hand, I am also comfortable doing the otherwise. Okay, so you are now a programmer. You can choose to write your function at anyhow you want it, depending on the tool. All right, so now let's change it to what we have before. So I might say that you can create multiples of function. Okay, so it's not only one that you can create. So for instance, let's create another function. Then we say what void. Let's call this one. Let's call it greetings. Okay, greetings. Then followed by our parentheses. Okay, so we do see out. All right, so now we've created another function. Okay, that says what? Hello, my programmers. The name of the function is greetings. Okay, so now if you want to display this one also, what do? We have to call it. Okay, so let's call it. So we say what greetings, and we are good to go. Now let's run the code and see what we have. Oh, sorry, failed because we have to earn it. Okay, okay, let's run the code one more time, and we can see the first one runs, which we say hello world. Let's talk about C++ function, and the second one also proceed by saying hello program. How are you all doing today? Okay, so that is that. All right. So function in other programming languages they look the same. Okay, it's just the syntax differences and some basic concept that you need to understand. Okay, for instance, I was teaching in my JavaScript lesson that I was teaching. You can see how I defined the JavaScript function. So you can see define a JavaScript function. To define a JavaScript function, you use the keyword function. You first have to call the name function, followed by the keyword that you want to use. The keyword followed by what a parenthesis. As we are also using the parenthesis. After the parenthesis, it's followed by the curly braces, like how you are seeing here. Okay, you can see a function, then the name of the function, then parenthesis, and your code goes in here. It looks the same as what you are doing here. That is why when you learn one programming language, learning other programming languages will not be difficult for you. And you are so much opportunity to be learning the mother of all languages, which is the C++. So guys, let's end here. Come back on the next one. All right, welcome back, guys. In this episode, we'll be looking at return function. Okay, so on our previous episode, I did mention about a return function, and I said that void cannot return. Okay, which I did not explain. I told you that I would take my time to explain it in our next episode, which is this one. So in this episode, we are taking our time to know what is a return function and how can we create a return function and the data types that are supportive to a return function and how can we create a return function and see it working at a go. All right. So without much ado, let's dive in. All right, so this is what we have from our previous episode. Okay, so now let's wipe it out. Okay, so we are going to explain the int variable. So now we will take this one also out. Yes, so I said that void cannot return, but int, float, double, they can all return. Okay, they have the ability to return. Now, what do I mean by cannot return and can return, or whatsoever be the case? Now, let's create a function that add two numbers. Okay, and we will be using the int. Okay, so now we will say int, then we call the name of the function add two numbers. Okay, now with our parentheses, then with our curly braces, then we open it like this. Okay, now our code goes in here. All right, we are going to create a variable inside our function. Yes, it is accepted. Let's go ahead and do that. So we do int x, then we create another one int y. Okay, something like this. Then what will be next here? We will say c out, enter the first value, then we end the line, then we see in to x. Okay, we give the first value to s, then we come to down below, then we do c out, then we said enter the second value, then we end the line like this. Okay, then again we can see the vitality of a function, okay, the importance of a function. You can see that even though we create one function, but we are writing so many code and doing so many things inside that function, okay. In fact, a function can do so many things. We can do so many things inside one function, okay. For instance, you can write a whole bit of code, okay, then you put it in one function so that whenever you need that code, you just have to call the function and you see it being performing, okay. So this is the awesomeness of using function. Okay, so now that you are seeing for x, then we have to do the same for y. Okay, so we do C in, then we say what? Y. All right, awesome. All right, so I'll urge you not to be confused, okay? It's very simple. We created a function like how we did previously, okay? But in this case, we added integer variable, which is s and y. And here we are saying that the first message that we should see is what? Enter your first value. And we are seeing the first value to be x. In the same manner, we are seeing the second value to be what? Y. That is that, okay? So you can see that we are having an issue here. Maybe in your code block, you might not get this kind of error. You might even come here and call the function add two numbers. When you call your function and you run the code, in your code block, the code can be run, but just that if you put in the right values, you will not get anything. But in my S code, it will not run at all. You can see that build failed, okay? So what is actually going on? Let's read the error that we are having here. It is telling us that what? The function that we created is not void function. So it is only void function that we can leave it like this and run the code for it to work. For instance, if this happens to be a void function, void, okay? When I put in void, look at what is going to happen. We can see that it is gone. The first error is gone. Why is it that the first error is gone? It is because with void function, this one is understandable. Like I said before, in void function, we don't need any return. Because we are using the int function, the compiler cannot fathom it, okay? The compiler is telling us that here there is a mistake here, because if you are using an int function, after declaring everything, you need to return, okay? So what are you returning? We are returning x plus y, okay? We are returning x plus y. Now let's leave it and see if this one will vanish, okay? And there we go. We can see that it is gone. Okay, so in this place, it's telling us that we do not end the code. So I'll just bring the semicolon like this. And we are good to go. We can see. Let me comment the return. When we commented the return, we can see that we'll be having the error. So this is what I wanted you to understand. So when you are dealing with the int function, whatsoever code that you write, we need to return it. Okay, that is why I said that void is not a return function, but int, float, doubled, they are all return functions. Okay, supposedly we are using void, like as I demonstrated before. We are good to go. We don't need to return anything. Okay, there wouldn't be any error in our console. With void, let me run the code and show you something. And we can see that I'm getting the result. Enter the value, and I put my first value, I put 10, the second value, I put 10, and the code ends like that, okay, because we've not done anything to the code, okay. So now I change it to int, okay, and now I am returning x plus y. And when I run the code, enter your first value, I say 10. Enter your second value, I say 20. When I run it, I still don't get anything. It is still the same. So why is it still the same? Let me explain it. Let me explain it again once and for all so that you get it well, okay? Integer, float, and double are the only functions that can return a value, okay? Integer or int, float, and double are the only function that can return a value. Void function cannot return a value. So please get it like that. Now, for instance, if I change this integer to void, we can see that my compiler will complain. Okay, you can see that the void function that we have created should not what return a value. That is that. Okay, so when you are using a void function, it cannot return a value. But when you are using int, float, or doubled, you are good to go to return a value. And then again, int is for whole numbers, float is for decimal numbers, and doubled is for both decimal numbers and the whole numbers. Okay. All right. So now when you run the code, as we ran it previously, we do not get anything. Okay. When you put in the values, the first value is 10 and the second value is 10, and the code just ends. Even though we return it, but we are not getting anything. So return the value will not add anything to it. Okay. We are just returning it. So for it to work, you still need to do some additional coding. Okay, so we will come here inside our int main. Okay, when we enter in like this, then we have to create a variable. So I'm creating a variable and I'm naming it what total. So now what I will do next is that I'll come here, then I will do total equals. Now if I do total equals like this, okay, so I'm saying that now this variable called total that we created here, now the total is equal to what the function. Okay, so this variable is equal to the function. And now, when I said this variable is equal to the function, it simply means that the variable here is equal to, in our case, s plus y, because that is what we are returning now. So now that it is s plus y, the total, which is the variable here, has been assigned the value as what? The function, the entire function. And now we have returned the entire function to be what? X and y. So now when I run the code, we are still not true. Let's run the code and see something again. Enter your value. I say 10. You see, there's no much difference. It is because we are not true. Okay, we still have to add additional code to it. Okay, so what actually is happening is that even though it is working, when we run the code like this and we said the first value is 10 and the second value is 20, even though it is working, but we are not telling the code to seeing it out. Okay, that is why we are not seeing any result. So now to be able to get the result, we have to do see out. Then we say what? Total. What are we seeing out? We are seeing out the total. Then we end it like this. We end the line like this. So all things being equal, if you run the code now, we will get a positive response. So now what is your first value? It's 10. What is the second value? It's 20. So now we can see that we are having the total as 30 here. Okay, so this is what I'm talking about. All right, so now let's make it more professional. The way the total was displayed, the answer displayed wasn't good at all. Okay, so what we do is that we will say what the total is. Okay, we said the total is. So now when we run the code and enter the first value, we say 10. Second value, we say 40. Then when you hit enter, we can see that we have what the total is what? 50. Awesome, awesome, awesome. All right, so now let me explain it one more time. Okay, so like I said before, the compiler read our code from top. Okay, so like descending order. Okay, so it is descending from top to down. Now from here we created a function that's what add two numbers. Okay, and a variable that is what s and y. The two numbers that we are adding, we say we don't know, so we are assuming the two numbers to be s and y. Okay, so on our next line of code, what we are saying is that we are seeing out the first value and we assign that first value to be what? The first value to be x. Okay, which we don't know yet. We don't know the actual number. So, and we assign out the second value to be what? To be y. And here, what we are doing is that whatsoever this x and y is, we said we are returning x and y. Supposedly we use minus, then we are saying what? We are subtracting, okay, x and y. If you are using the multiplication sign, then we said what we are multiplying x and y, which will work perfectly fine. Okay, so on our next line of code, which is inside our main, okay, so we get a variable that holds total, and we said this variable that holds total, we are assigning that variable to be what? Whatsoever this function will be. And now the function is what? X and y, because we are returning the function. So now on our last line of code, we are saying that we should see out the total of this x and y. Okay, so now we are seeing out the total of this s and y that's returned. So now that we make it multiplication, let's run the code and see something. From here, we said, okay, the first value should be 5 and the second value should be 10. Okay, so 5 times 10 will give us what? 50. So it says what the total is what? 50. Okay, in the same manner, if you change this one to be a division sign, in programming division is like this. Okay, it will divide it. If we want to subtract, like I said before, we can go ahead and subtract, and we can also add. Okay, so that is that. All right, so what I want you guys to do is that you have to sit yourself down and create more functions and just playing around it. Okay, so for instance, you can create an integer function that is, then you can call it what? Addition. Okay, you can create a function and call it addition. Then you'll be doing some addition. Okay, so when you change this one also must be changed. Then you'll be doing some addition. Okay, in the same manner, we can even come here. We can create another function and call it subtraction or multiplication. It is left for you to practice more, okay, and do some arithmetic operations. So like anything, practice more, okay. Okay, so one will be asking, what if I want to use void to build the same program? What should I do? Using void to build this program, it will even make it more easier, okay. So let's say we are using void, okay. So now, since we are using void, we don't need a return. We can see that we are getting a lot of errors because if you are using void, we don't need a return in void. Okay. So now, instead of void, we will take it out. Then we say what? C out. Then we say what the total is. Then we do x plus y. Then we end it like this. Now, after this, we don't need all this. Okay. We don't need if we are using void, we don't need all this. We don't need them. All what we have to do is to just call the function, add two numbers. And all things being equal, if we run this code, we are good to go. What is happening? Oh, okay. I did not end this. I did not end the line. Okay. So basically this. Okay. So now let's run the code and see what we have. So what is your first value? We say 30. And what is your second value? We say 40. And we have our answer 70. Simple as that, okay? Simple as that. So when we are going by the void, it's rather make it look more simpler, okay? Because with that one, we are not returning the values. All right, so one might be asking, even this one, the void is very simple. Then why are we stressing ourselves to use int and going through the hardship of the return and whatsoever be the case? Okay, so the truth of the matter is that if you are building a real world project, okay, which is maybe a game or any application at all, in most cases we will be using the return. Okay, we'll be using the return the more. Okay, so we need to understand that concept better in order for us to move faster. Basically, what I wanted you to understand is how the return works using the int variable. Okay, so now let's undo everything and take it to where it was before. Okay, so now what we are going to do is that we are going to see how the float and the double also works. It is pretty much the same, okay? So let's see how that one also works. Okay, so now when we change this one to be a float, okay, it means that we are using a float function. So if we are using a float function, then the integer that we created also, we have to use a float, okay? We have to use a float integers, okay? So we change this one also to be a float, and also this one, the total, um, the, the variable, okay? We change all the variables to be a float, okay? And we are good to go. So with this one, as we know that floats can hold a decimal numbers, okay? So for instance, if I do 32, the first value is 32, and the second value is, okay, 30.9. And we can see that we are getting the right answer, which is 53.9, okay? Which is the right answer. Okay, so supposedly we were using the integer, we were using the int function like this, okay, and we run the code, int function like this, and we run the code, and we said 23, and the second value we said 30.9, and we hit enter. We can see that it is giving us 53, but it is not add the dot 9. The reason being is that all the function that we are using, the function we use int function, and integers cannot hold decimals. Okay, so the same thing applies to the double. But with a double, if we're doing calculations, it's better for you to use double, okay, because the double can hold both the whole numbers and the decimal numbers at the same time. Then we have to change here to be to be double. Then we change this variable also to be double. Okay, then we come here, then we change this variable also to be double. All right, good. Now let's run the code and see. So your first number, we said 20, and the second one, we said 40.9. And there we go, we have our correct answer. Okay, so let's run the code again. So your first number, now we are using a whole numbers, okay, and we have the right answer also. All right, so for calculations, it is always advisable to go for the double. Okay, now let's run it one more time, and we said the first number, we said 10, let's say 100, and the second number, let's say negative 190.90, and there we go. Okay, so it can hold both the decimal and the whole numbers, even with the negative numbers. You are good to go. All right, congratulations on this one. Please keep on practicing. Okay, if you don't understand anything, please reach out. Keep on practicing till we get to perfection. Okay. All right, welcome back, guys. In this episode, we'll be looking at function parameters or parameterized functions. Okay, now we are still on function, and before we move on to today's business, I would like us to explain one thing before we move on. That is the variable. Okay, now to declare a variable, we have the local variable and the global variable. Okay, or the local declaration of a variable or the global declaration. Okay, now what we have here is what is called the local declaration. For instance, what we have here in our project. Now we declare a variable which is x and y. Once we declare a variable inside our function, okay, so this is the open and the closing of our function. So now once we declare a variable inside our function, it is called local. Okay, so this is a local declaration of a variable. Now, the limitation that the looker comes with is that, let's say we are having a multiples of function in our project. The rest of the function cannot access this x and y variable that we created here because it has been created locally. It is inside our function, so only our function can have access to it. Now, how do you allow the other functions or the other block of code to be able to access our variable globally? Okay, so to do that is very simple. You only have to declare the variable not inside your function, but you declare it what's outside the function like this. Okay, so when you make a declaration like this, then you are getting the access to the rest of the functions to be able to access your variable. Okay, so this is the global declaration. Okay, so when you bring it inside here, it is called the local declaration. All right, so I might say that you will understand it better whilst you are progressing. All right, now let's move on. All right, so now talking about the function parameter, it is very simple. We only affirm it when we want to transfer a data from one function to another function. Okay, you understand it better whilst you are still progressing. Okay, so now we can see that here we have declared our variable here, okay, which is s and y. All right, so now to use the function parameter, you pass the arguments. Okay, anything put inside this parenthesis is called argument. Okay, you pass the argument inside the parenthesis. Okay, you pass it inside the parenthesis, or you declare your variable inside your parenthesis. That is the argument. For instance, let's say int x and int y. What will separate the s and the y is what? Is comma. It's not semicolon. Okay, it's comma. Okay, so when we declare it like this, then we don't need this one. Okay, let me change this one to int so that we will see ourselves using an int variable. So actually, this is the function parameter. Okay, we are passing it inside the parenthesis. Okay, and this is the argument. Okay, we are passing the argument inside the parenthesis. So we do it like this whenever we want to transfer a data from this function to another function. All right, now let's make our code clean. Okay, let's clear everything. Okay, let's clear everything and have our code clean. Okay, now after we pass the argument like this, now let's come here and create a variable first value, and let's create the second one called the second value. All right, so inside here, then we do cout, enter the first value, then we do, of course, cin, then we say first value, then we do cout, enter the second value, and we cin to the second value. Oh, sorry, value. Okay, value. And here we will do cout. Total of the values is the total of the above values. So then, at normal circumstance, we're supposed to do with what? First value plus second value. Okay, then we end our line like this. On the normal function, this is how we do it. Okay, but we are not handling the normal function in this section. Okay, in this episode, we are looking at the function parameters. So what do I do? What I'll do is that instead of adding the first value and the second value, I'll pass in the function. Okay, I'll pass in this function. Okay, add two numbers. So it will be add two numbers. Okay, you see that my test editor has added the argument for me, but for some reason, let me take it out and let's explain it. Now, if I run this code, let me run it and show you. If I run this code, you see that it says failed. Okay. All right. Now let me explain before you move on. Okay. So you can see that we have declared our function here and we have passed the argument here. Okay. So this is the argument, which is the x and the y, and we are returning s and y. Okay. So whatever s and y is, we are returning it. Okay. We are adding s and y and we are returning it. Now, when we come here, when we call this function here, we've not given it any value, okay, because this s and y, it doesn't carry any value. We don't know if s is 10 or s is 20 or whatsoever. So now, manually, we have to give it the value. Okay, so let's say whatever s is, we are calling to be 10, and whatsoever y is, we want y to be 20. Okay, something like this. Okay, so by doing this, whenever when we run the code, we're supposed to be getting what 30 because it is going to return this one s plus y, which is 10 plus 20. Now forget about whatever is here. Even if you put 100 and 100, you'll still get what 20 30 as an answer because we have input the values manually. Okay, so for instance, when we come here and run the code, it said enter the first value. I am putting in 200 and I'm putting in 100, but I'm going to get answer 30. Okay, you can see the value is 30. Okay, and I've explained because we are not we have put in the values manually. That's why you are getting that. All right. So now how do you run a code in a way that we will get the actual answer that the user input, not what we are giving it manually. Okay, now I would like you to pause the video and give yourself 3 to 5 minutes and write the code in a way that when you run it, the actual value that you put rather would be shown on the screen, not you giving the value manually. Okay, like how we did it previously. All right, in the case you couldn't do it, we'll come back and solve it, but I would like you to do it yourself before you move on. Okay, all right. Now pause the video. Seriously, pause the video. Pause it. Pause the video and solve it by yourself before we move on. All right. Can anybody out there hear me? Hear me? All right, well done, well done, well done. If you're able to do it, congratulations. If you couldn't even do it, congratulations. However, you tried, okay? You tried. It's very simple. All right, so to get it running automatically but not manually, what we have to do is here we put 10, which is the S. We are not going to put 10, but you're rather going to put what's the variable that we declare here, which is the first value. Okay, so we just put here first value, and the second one, which is the 20, we are changing it to be what the second value. Okay, now by doing this, let's run the code and see what we have. Now enter the first value. We say the first value is 200 and the second value we say is 300. Now when we hit enter, we have 500 as expected. All right guys, so that is it for the function parameter or the parameterized function. Now you can have multiples of function. It doesn't really matter. You can have maybe a float or a double. It doesn't really matter. Okay, the concept that I wanted you to get is something which is different from what we learned previously. Okay, so this is that for the function parameter, and I hope you got it right. Okay, so don't worry, on our next episode we are going to combine everything that you have learned so far, and we are going to build our second calculator, which will be looking awesome. Okay, all right, so keep on practicing till we meet again. Happy coding.